Most people work hard their entire lives and still never get ahead. They wake up early, they stay late, they do everything they're told. And yet, wealth, success, and freedom always seem just out of reach. That's not an accident. The truth is, success has very little to do with how hard you work, and almost everything to do with how you think. More than 80 years ago, Napoleon Hill studied over 500 of the most successful people in the world, including industrial giants, inventors, and self-made millionaires. He wasn't looking for luck. He wasn't looking for talent. He was searching for the mental code that separates those who rise from those who stay stuck. What he discovered became one of the most influential success books of all time. Think and Grow Rich. But here's the problem. Most people misunderstand this book. Some treat it like magic. Others dismiss it as outdated. Many read it and still never change their lives. Not because the book is wrong, but because they never truly understand what it's teaching. This is not a book about wishing for money. It's not about blind optimism or mystical thinking. It's about conditioning the mind, directing desire, and turning belief into disciplined action. Chapter 1. Desire, the real starting point of achievement. Every major achievement begins long before money appears. It begins in the mind, not with a casual wish, not with vague hope, but with a burning, focused desire that refuses to fade. In this first chapter, Napoleon Hill makes a bold claim. People don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they never decide what they truly want, or they decide weakly. Desire, as Hill defines it, is not wanting something one day. It is deciding, with intensity, that something will happen and aligning your thoughts and actions around that decision. Most people say they want success, but their desire is soft. They want it if it's convenient. They want it if it doesn't require sacrifice. They want it as long as failure isn't embarrassing. That kind of desire produces average results. Hill contrasts this with people who succeed against impossible odds, not because they were smarter, not because they had more resources, but because their desire was so strong that quitting was never an option. One of the most powerful ideas in this chapter is this: a strong desire creates persistence automatically. When you truly want something, you don't need motivation. You don't need reminders. You don't need external pressure. You keep going because stopping feels worse than continuing. Hill shares multiple stories of people who achieved extraordinary success after repeated failure, rejection, and humiliation. What separated them from everyone else was not luck. It was obsession with a clearly defined goal. And here's the key detail many people miss. Desire must be specific. Wanting more money is meaningless. Wanting success is too vague to act on. Hill insists that desire only becomes powerful when it is precise. How much do you want? By when? For what purpose? What are you willing to give in return? Without clarity, the mind drifts. With clarity, the mind organizes itself around the goal. Another crucial point in this chapter is sacrifice. Hill is direct about this. You don't get something for nothing. Every achievement demands a price: time, comfort, certainty, ego. People who never succeed often want the reward without paying the cost. People who succeed accept the cost up front. This is why desire is not positive thinking. It's commitment. Desire forces you to choose long-term gain over short-term comfort, discipline over distraction, purpose over approval. When desire is weak, excuses feel reasonable. When desire is strong, excuses disappear. Hill also emphasizes repetition. A desire thought once is powerless. A desire thought daily begins to shape behavior. Repeated consistently, it reshapes identity. You start acting like the kind of person who achieves the goal long before the goal arrives. That's not magic. That's psychology. Your actions follow your self-image. Your self-image follows your dominant thoughts. and your dominant thoughts are chosen, whether consciously or not. In a nutshell, desire is not wishful thinking. It is the decision to pursue a specific outcome, backed by commitment, sacrifice, and persistence. If your desire is vague, your results will be vague. If your desire is intense, focused, and repeated, your behavior will align automatically. Every outcome in life begins here. Not with opportunity, not with resources, but with a decision that says, "This is what I'm going after no matter what." Chapter 2. Faith. Programming the mind for belief and action. Faith, in this chapter, has nothing to do with religion. It has everything to do with belief. Not passive belief, not blind hope, but a deep inner conviction that shapes how you think, act, and respond to setbacks. Napoleon Hill argues that belief is the bridge between desire and results. You can want something intensely, but if you don't believe it's possible for you, your actions will quietly sabotage the goal. Here's how that happens. When belief is weak, you hesitate. You delay decisions. You quit early. You listen more to doubt than to opportunity. On the surface, it looks like bad luck. Underneath, it's a lack of faith in your own ability to succeed. Hill makes a powerful psychological claim. Belief is a habit, and like any habit, it can be built deliberately. This is where many people get uncomfortable. They think belief should come after results. Hill flips that idea completely. Results follow belief, not the other way around. If you wait for proof before believing, you will wait forever. Every major achievement in history began as an idea that had no evidence behind it at the start. Faith works because the mind responds to what it repeatedly accepts as true. Hill explains that thoughts combined with strong emotion tend to turn into action. Fear is proof of this. You imagine danger, feel emotion, and your body reacts immediately. Faith works the same way, but in the opposite direction. When you repeatedly think thoughts of confidence, certainty, and purpose, the mind begins to treat them as instructions. Your posture changes, your decisions become firmer, your tolerance for setbacks increases, you don't feel fearless, you feel committed. One of the most practical tools in this chapter is autosuggestion, which Hill introduces as a way to program belief intentionally. Put simply, autosuggestion is controlled self-talk, not random affirmations, not empty slogans, but deliberate repetition of specific ideas tied to a clear goal. What you tell yourself consistently matters, because the subconscious mind does not argue. It accepts repetition as truth. It then influences behavior accordingly. Most people are already using autosuggestion. They're just doing it unconsciously. They repeat, "I'm not good with money. People like me don't get ahead. Success is for others, not me." Over time, those thoughts feel factual, and the mind works hard to prove them right. Hill's point is simple but uncomfortable. If your results don't change, it's often because your beliefs haven't changed. Faith does not mean pretending failure isn't possible. It means deciding that failure will not be final. People with faith still experience doubt. They just don't obey it. They act before confidence feels complete. And action strengthens belief far more effectively than thinking ever will. Another key insight here is emotional intensity. Belief grows faster when emotion is involved. This is why desire must come first. A goal that excites you emotionally is easier to believe in than one you chose out of logic or social pressure. Faith is not something you wait for. It's something you practice, through repetition, through disciplined thought, through action taken before certainty arrives. To clarify the idea, faith is not wishful thinking. It is trained belief that influences behavior. When belief is strong, action becomes natural. When belief is weak, discipline feels exhausting. Change the belief, and behavior follows. Chapter 3. Autosuggestion. Rewriting the inner script. Whether you realize it or not, you are constantly talking to yourself. Every thought you repeat, every label you accept, every story you tell yourself about who you are and what you're capable of. This chapter explains why those inner conversations quietly shape your results. Napoleon Hill introduces autosuggestion as a method for influencing the subconscious mind. In modern terms, this is mental conditioning. It's the process of feeding your mind ideas so consistently that they begin to feel natural, believable, and automatic. Here's the key idea. Your conscious mind chooses thoughts. Your subconscious mind turns repeated thoughts into habits, and habits control behavior. Most people never take control of this process. They allow their environment, past failures, and other people's opinions to write their inner script. Over time, those messages become identity. Statements like, "I'm not disciplined. I always mess things up. Money slips through my fingers." At first, these are just thoughts. After repetition, they feel like facts. And once they feel factual, behavior follows without resistance. Autosuggestion works because the subconscious mind does not filter truth from repetition. It absorbs whatever is emphasized consistently, especially when emotion is involved. This is why fear is so powerful. A fearful thought repeated with emotion creates immediate physical and behavioral responses. Autosuggestion uses the same mechanism, but deliberately. Hill emphasizes that autosuggestion is not about lying to yourself. It's about choosing which ideas you allow to dominate your thinking. There is an important distinction here. Repeating vague affirmations does very little. Repeating specific emotionally charged statements tied to a clear goal does a lot. For example, saying, "I want to be successful," has almost no impact. Saying, "I am building financial independence through disciplined action, and I act on opportunities daily," creates a different internal response. Why? Because the mind responds to clarity. Another crucial insight in this chapter is timing. Autosuggestion works best when the mind is relaxed. Early mornings, late evenings, quiet moments when distractions are minimal. In these states, the subconscious is more receptive. This is why routines matter. People who succeed often appear confident and decisive, but that confidence didn't appear randomly. It was rehearsed internally long before it showed up externally. Hill also warns about inconsistency. If you repeat empowering ideas once a week, but reinforce doubt all day long, doubt will win. The dominant thought always prevails. Autosuggestion is not about intensity for one day. It's about consistency over time. Small, repeated mental inputs shape long-term identity. Once identity shifts, behavior changes without force. You stop needing willpower. You start acting in alignment with who you believe you are. In plain terms, autosuggestion is how you program the beliefs that drive your actions. What you repeatedly tell yourself becomes familiar. What becomes familiar becomes comfortable. And what becomes comfortable becomes behavior. If you don't choose your inner script, it will be chosen for you. Chapter 4. Specialized Knowledge. Why Focus Beats Information. Most people believe success comes from knowing more. More degrees, more information, more credentials. This chapter challenges that belief. Napoleon Hill explains that general knowledge rarely leads to wealth. It's specialized knowledge, applied with purpose, that creates results. Here's the distinction. General knowledge is knowing a little about many things. Specialized knowledge is knowing enough about one valuable area to act decisively. The world rewards usefulness, not intelligence. You don't need to be the smartest person in the room. You need to know something that solves a real problem, creates value for others, can be applied consistently. Hill makes another important point. Knowledge alone is powerless without action. Many people hide behind learning. They keep studying, researching, and preparing, but never execute. They mistake being informed for being effective. Specialized knowledge becomes powerful only when it is organized, applied, combined with decision and persistence. This is why experience often beats education. Experience forces application. Hill also reminds us that you don't need to know everything yourself. You can borrow knowledge through mentors, partners, and teams. What matters is access and application, not personal mastery of every detail. In simple terms, success doesn't come from knowing more than everyone else. It comes from knowing what matters and using it well. Focus beats information. Application beats accumulation. And action beats perfection. Started as an idea in someone's mind. Nothing is created without imagination first. Chapter 5. Imagination. Turning ideas into opportunity. Every product you use, every business you admire, every system that makes life easier. In this chapter, Napoleon Hill explains that imagination is the workshop where desire and knowledge are turned into plans. Many people misunderstand imagination. They think it means fantasy or daydreaming. Hill defines it differently. Imagination is the ability to combine existing ideas into new forms that solve problems. There are two types of imagination discussed here. The first is creative imagination. This is where new ideas are born. Insights, flashes of intuition, and original concepts often appear when the mind is relaxed and open. The second is synthetic imagination. This is the ability to take ideas that already exist and rearrange them into something useful. Most successful businesses are built this way. The key point is this: imagination is useless without action. Ideas alone have no value. They gain power only when connected to a clear plan and decisive execution. Hill emphasizes that imagination works best when driven by strong desire. When you care deeply about a goal, your mind naturally looks for solutions. This is why pressure often produces breakthroughs. The mind becomes more creative when it needs to find a way. Another important insight here is that imagination improves with use. The more you practice turning ideas into plans, the stronger this skill becomes. People who succeed don't wait for perfect ideas. They act on imperfect ones and refine them along the way. To summarize, imagination is not about dreaming. It's about problem solving. Ideas are raw material. Action gives them value. When desire, knowledge, and imagination work together, opportunity appears where others see obstacles. Chapter 6. Organized planning. Turning action into results. Ideas alone don't create success. Neither does desire. Neither does belief. They all require a plan. In this chapter, Napoleon Hill makes one thing clear. Success is not accidental. It is organized. Many people fail, not because their ideas are bad, but because they never translate those ideas into structured action. A plan is the bridge between imagination and results. Hill emphasizes that effective planning has two key qualities. It is practical, not perfect. It is flexible, not rigid. Most people wait too long before acting. They want certainty. They want guarantees. They want the plan to feel flawless. But progress doesn't require perfect planning. It requires movement. Hill explains that plans will often fail on the first attempt, sometimes the second, sometimes the third. This is not a sign to quit. It's a signal to adjust. People who succeed treat failure as feedback, not defeat. Another major idea in this chapter is collaboration. Hill introduces the concept of working with others who complement your weaknesses. You don't need to possess every skill yourself. You need access to them. This is where planning becomes powerful. You identify what must be done. Then you decide who or what can help you do it. Persistence is the fuel here. A plan without persistence collapses at the first obstacle. Persistence turns setbacks into refinement. Hill makes an important psychological observation. Most people stop not because the plan is impossible, but because discomfort appears. Rejection, criticism, delays. Organized planning accepts these as part of the process. Action creates clarity. Clarity improves the plan, and repetition strengthens confidence. To put it in simple terms, success is not built by thinking alone. It is built by structured action. Plans don't need to be perfect. They need to be active. Move, adjust, continue. That is how ideas become results. Chapter 7. Decision. The power of speed and commitment. Most people don't fail because they make bad decisions. They fail because they avoid making decisions at all. In this chapter, Napoleon Hill identifies hesitation as one of the biggest enemies of success. Successful people decide quickly. They may adjust later, but they commit early. Unsuccessful people delay. They wait for more information. They wait for approval. They wait for certainty. And while they wait, opportunity moves on. Hill observed that leaders, entrepreneurs, and high achievers share a common trait. They form opinions decisively and stand by them. This doesn't mean they are always right. It means they are willing to act, learn, and correct course. Indecision drains energy. Decision creates momentum. One of the most damaging habits Hill describes is the need for consensus. Many people allow fear of criticism to dictate their choices. They want everyone to agree before they move. But progress rarely comes from group approval. It comes from personal conviction. Hill also warns against the influence of outside opinions. When you constantly change direction based on what others think, you lose clarity and confidence. Decisive people listen selectively. They gather input, then choose a path and move forward. Another key insight here is that decisions shape identity. Every time you decide and act, you reinforce self-trust. Every time you hesitate, you reinforce doubt. Confidence is built through action, not thinking. Speed matters because opportunities are often temporary. Those who act first gain experience, feedback, and position. Those who wait inherit leftovers. To make it clear, success favors decision over hesitation. Clarity comes from movement, not waiting. Decide, act, adjust if necessary. Indecision is a habit. So is commitment. Chapter 8. Persistence. The ability to outlast failure. Talent starts the race. Persistence finishes it. In this chapter, Napoleon Hill explains why so many capable people fall short while others, with fewer advantages, eventually succeed. The difference is not intelligence. It is not opportunity. It is the ability to continue after discomfort appears. Persistence is not stubbornness. It is disciplined endurance. Most people quit for predictable reasons. They face rejection. They experience delays. They encounter criticism. They feel temporary failure. And instead of adjusting, they retreat. Hill points out something uncomfortable. Failure is rarely final. But the emotional response to failure often is. When people stop, it's usually because discouragement convinces them that effort is no longer worth it. Persistence requires a certain mental posture, clear purpose, strong desire, self-belief, and a long-term perspective. Without these, resistance feels personal. With them, resistance feels temporary. Hill also highlights the role of habit. Persistence is not something you turn on in a crisis. It's built through daily behavior. Small acts of follow-through train the mind to finish what it starts. Repeated over time, this creates emotional resilience. Another key insight in this chapter is that lack of persistence often disguises itself as realism. People say, "I'm just being practical. It's not the right time. I tried, and it didn't work." Often, this is not wisdom. It's fear wearing a reasonable mask. Persistent people are not immune to doubt. They simply refuse to let doubt make decisions for them. Hill also connects persistence to environment. Surrounding yourself with negative influences weakens endurance. Encouraging environments strengthen it. What you hear repeatedly shapes how long you're willing to endure. In clear terms, persistence is the skill of staying engaged when progress is slow. Most goals are abandoned inches from success, not because they were impossible, but because discomfort arrived before results. Those who persist long enough eventually separate themselves from the crowd. Chapter 9. The Mastermind. The Power of Aligned Minds. No one succeeds alone. It may look that way from the outside, but it never is. In this chapter, Napoleon Hill introduces one of the most powerful ideas in the book, the mastermind principle. At its core, a mastermind is a group of people who work together toward a shared purpose, each contributing different strengths, skills, and perspectives. When minds align around a goal, momentum increases. Hill observed that nearly every major success story involved collaboration, not just cooperation, but intentional alignment. People who try to do everything alone move slower. People who build the right alliances multiply their effectiveness. The mastermind principle works on two levels. First, practical support. Different people bring different knowledge. One person's weakness is another person's strength. Second, mental reinforcement. Belief strengthens when it's shared. Doubt weakens when it's challenged. Environment matters more than most people realize. If you surround yourself with people who complain, doubt, and criticize, persistence erodes quietly. If you surround yourself with people who think in solutions, confidence and momentum grow naturally. Hill also emphasizes intentional selection. Not everyone should be in your circle. Alignment matters more than friendship. Shared values matter more than convenience. A true mastermind group encourages progress, challenges excuses, reinforces purpose, holds standards high. Another important point here is energy. People influence each other emotionally and mentally, whether they intend to or not. When aligned minds focus on a goal, motivation becomes collective rather than individual. This reduces burnout. It increases resilience. In plain language, your environment shapes your results. The people you think with determine how far you go. Choose alignment over isolation. Build circles that reinforce growth, not comfort. Chapter 10. Sex Transmutation. Channeling Energy with Purpose. This chapter is one of the most misunderstood in the entire book, because of the language, because of the era it was written in, and because many people take it too literally. At its core, this chapter is not about sex. It's about energy. Napoleon Hill explains that the same energy driving strong emotion, desire, passion, and creativity can be redirected into productive effort. Think of it this way. Strong emotions are fuel. Left unmanaged, they scatter. Directed intentionally, they create momentum. Hill observed that many high achievers possessed intense emotional energy. They were driven, restless, obsessive. What separated them from others was not suppression of that energy, but direction. When emotional energy is scattered, focus weakens. Discipline fades. Effort becomes inconsistent. When emotional energy is channeled, concentration improves, persistence strengthens, creativity increases. Hill calls this transmutation. In modern terms, this is redirection. Instead of allowing impulses to control behavior, you convert emotional intensity into work, learning, creation, and problem-solving. This explains why many people feel most productive when they are emotionally engaged. Passion fuels endurance. Emotion fuels focus. Hill is clear about one thing. Energy itself is neutral. It can build or destroy, depending on how it's used. People who struggle with distraction often don't lack discipline. They lack direction. Another important insight in this chapter is timing. There are moments when emotional energy peaks. Instead of wasting those moments, successful people use them to think deeply, work intensely, create solutions, make bold decisions. This is not about denying desire, it's about using it. When energy is aligned with purpose, productivity feels natural instead of forced. To put it simply, strong emotion is power. If unmanaged, it drains you. If directed, it drives you. The most productive people don't suppress energy, they channel it into meaningful work. Chapter 11. The Subconscious Mind, where habits become destiny. Your results are not controlled by what you know. They are controlled by what you repeatedly accept. In this chapter, Napoleon Hill explains that the subconscious mind acts like a storage system. It absorbs whatever you feed it most often, whether those inputs are positive or negative, intentional or accidental. The subconscious does not reason. It does not debate. It responds to repetition and emotion. This is why habits are so powerful. A single thought does very little. A repeated thought becomes belief. A belief becomes automatic behavior. Hill connects the subconscious mind directly to autosuggestion. What you consistently tell yourself, especially with emotion, gets embedded below the surface. Once it's there, it influences decisions without conscious effort. This explains why people often sabotage themselves even when they know better. Their conscious goals conflict with their subconscious programming. You may want success, but if your subconscious is trained to expect failure, comfort, or limitation, it will quietly pull you back to what feels familiar. Another key idea in this chapter is emotional filtering. The subconscious responds more strongly to thoughts paired with emotion. Fear, desire, confidence, doubt. This is why emotionally charged experiences leave deep mental imprints. Hill's warning is clear. If you don't deliberately feed your subconscious constructive ideas, it will absorb whatever your environment provides. News, criticism, past failures, other people's limitations, all of it goes in. The solution is not force, it's consistency. Daily repetition of purposeful thoughts gradually reshapes the subconscious. Once reshaped, effort feels lighter, discipline feels natural, action feels aligned. In clear perspective, your subconscious mind runs the background of your life. Feed it intention, and it supports your goals. Feed it fear, and it reinforces limitation. What you repeat becomes what you live. Chapter 12. The Brain, where thought becomes influence. Your brain is not just a thinking machine, it is a receiver, a transmitter, and a filter. In this chapter, Napoleon Hill explains that the brain responds to the thoughts, emotions, and environments you expose it to consistently. In simple terms, your mind becomes tuned to what you focus on most. When your dominant thoughts are fear-based, scattered, or reactive, your perception narrows. You miss opportunities. You see threats before solutions. When your dominant thoughts are purposeful and focused, your perception expands. You notice patterns. You connect ideas. You recognize opportunity faster. Hill describes the brain as a kind of mental broadcasting station. What you repeatedly think and feel influences how you interpret the world around you. This explains why two people can face the same situation and see completely different possibilities. One sees limitation, the other sees leverage. Environment plays a major role here. The ideas you consume, the conversations you engage in, the people you spend time with. All of these shape how your brain processes information. Hill emphasizes that high-level thinking requires intentional input. You cannot expect clarity if your mental environment is chaotic. Another important idea in this chapter is sensitivity. The brain becomes more responsive with use. The more you train it to focus, reflect, and observe, the sharper it becomes. This is why people who think deeply often seem intuitive. They are not guessing. They are recognizing patterns formed over time. The brain doesn't create results on its own. It responds to direction. To frame it, simply, your brain reflects what you feed it. Focused input produces clear output. Scattered input produces confusion. Control your mental environment, and you begin to control how you think, decide, and act. Chapter 13. The Sixth Sense. When experience becomes intuition. This chapter is often misunderstood, not because it's complicated, but because it's described in unfamiliar terms. When Napoleon Hill talks about the sixth sense, he is not referring to anything mystical or supernatural. He is describing a mental ability that develops over time through experience, focus, and repetition. In modern language, this is intuition. Intuition is not a guess. It is rapid pattern recognition built from accumulated knowledge, emotional awareness, and lived experience. People who seem to just know what to do are rarely guessing. They have trained their minds, consciously or not, to recognize signals others overlook. Hill explains that the sixth sense becomes active only after the earlier principles are practiced consistently. Clear desire, strong belief, repeated autosuggestion, focused knowledge, persistent action. When these are in place, the mind begins to operate differently. Ideas surface more quickly, decisions feel clearer, opportunities appear at the right moment. This doesn't mean mistakes disappear. It means hesitation decreases. The sixth sense works quietly. It shows up as a strong inner signal, a sense of timing, a clear pull toward a decision. Hill emphasizes that this ability cannot be rushed. It develops naturally as confidence, discipline, and experience accumulate. This is why beginners rely on rules, while experts rely on judgment. Another important point in this chapter is trust. Many people experience intuitive insight but ignore it because it doesn't feel logical. They overthink. They seek external validation. People who succeed learn to respect informed intuition. They combine it with reason, not replace reason with it. The sixth sense is not a shortcut. It is the result of long-term mental conditioning. In clear perspective, intuition is earned, not gifted. It develops when thought, emotion, and experience align over time. The more disciplined your thinking and action become, the clearer your inner guidance feels. When intuition is informed, it becomes one of the most powerful decision-making tools you possess. Chapter 14. The Six Ghosts of Fear. The Invisible Barriers to Progress. Most people don't fail because of lack of opportunity. They fail because fear quietly controls their decisions. In this chapter, Napoleon Hill exposes the internal forces that sabotage effort long before results are possible. He identifies 6 core fears that limit human potential. Fear of poverty, fear of criticism, fear of ill health, fear of loss of love, fear of old age, fear of death. These fears are not always obvious. They rarely announce themselves clearly. Instead, they hide behind hesitation, excuses, and overthinking. Fear of poverty shows up as playing small. People avoid risk, not because it's reckless, but because they are terrified of loss. Fear of criticism shows up as people-pleasing. People abandon their goals to avoid judgment or rejection. Fear of ill health creates constant anxiety. It drains energy and focus before effort even begins. Fear of loss of love leads to conformity. People choose approval over authenticity. Fear of old age manifests as regret avoidance. People rush decisions or cling to comfort because time feels threatening. Fear of death, often unconscious, drives distraction. People avoid deep focus because stillness forces reflection. Hill's most important insight here is this: fear is learned. It is reinforced through repetition, environment, and past experience. And because it is learned, it can be unlearned. Fear does not disappear through denial. It weakens through understanding and exposure. Hill encourages deliberate self-examination, not to judge yourself, but to identify which fears are shaping your behavior. Once fear is named, it loses power. Another critical idea in this chapter is substitution. Fear cannot simply be removed. It must be replaced. Confidence replaces fear of criticism. Preparation weakens fear of poverty. Purpose reduces fear of time and aging. Fear thrives in vagueness. Clarity disrupts it. Most people never confront their fears directly. They build lives around avoiding them. Those who succeed do the opposite. They act in spite of fear, repeatedly, until fear loses authority. In summary, fear is not a signal to stop. It is a signal to examine. The fears that control you determine the limits of your life. The fears you face determine the size of your growth. Once fear is exposed, it no longer decides for you. Chapter 15. The Master Key to Riches. Pulling it all together. There is no single secret in this book. There is a system. In this final chapter, Napoleon Hill makes one thing unmistakably clear. None of the previous principles work in isolation. Desire without belief fades. Belief without action stalls. Action without persistence collapses. Knowledge without focus scatters. Planning without decision delays. And effort without the right environment weakens. The master key is alignment. When your thoughts, emotions, habits, decisions, and environment point in the same direction, progress becomes inevitable. Most people struggle because they are internally divided. They want success, but fear criticism. They plan, but hesitate. They believe, but don't persist long enough. Hill's message is simple and demanding at the same time. You must bring your inner world into agreement with your outer goals. This means a clearly defined desire that you refuse to abandon. Beliefs reinforced through repetition and action. Consistent mental discipline. Decisive movement, even when certainty is incomplete. Persistence that outlasts discomfort. An environment that supports growth rather than doubt. When these elements align, effort feels different. Less forced, more focused, more confident. Hill also emphasizes responsibility. No one else controls this process for you. No mentor, no opportunity, no external breakthrough. The work happens internally first. Once the mind is aligned, behavior follows naturally. Once behavior becomes consistent, results compound. This is why people with similar resources end up in vastly different places. The difference is not circumstance, it's internal coordination. In summary, there is no shortcut to lasting success. But there is a formula. When desire becomes commitment, belief becomes action, and action becomes habit, results are no longer a matter of luck. They are a matter of time. This is not about thinking instead of doing. It's about thinking in a way that makes doing inevitable. And that is the real meaning behind Think and Grow Rich. If you want more clear modern breakdowns of timeless books, follow Audiobook Lib and continue the journey. You don't need more information. You need alignment. And now, you have the map.